This is the beginning of the second unit in Georgia history, Georgia's land and climate. Georgia has an amazingly varied um, set of landforms, all the way from mountains with waterfalls, canyons, beaches, marshes, swamps. There's a huge variety of landforms in Georgia. We're going to study them. Georgia itself has a land area of, I just round it to 59,000 square miles. It's the largest area in land, largest state with land area east of the Mississippi. I can remember that because Georgia has 159 counties and it's 59,000 square miles. There are almost 2,500 miles of shoreline. That includes coastal shoreline and shoreline on rivers. The highest point, way up here in North Georgia, is Brasstown Bald at almost 5,000 feet above sea level. And the lowest point is, of course, sea level down on the coast. It stretches 250 miles at the widest part and 315 miles from north to south. There are 5 geographic regions in Georgia: the Appalachian Plateau, the Ridge and Valley, Blue Ridge, Piedmont, and the Coastal Plain, which this map has divided into the upper and lower. Each of these regions has different characteristics, soils, physical features, and climates, and those differences affect the plant and animal life in the areas, as well as the history of that area and how people in that area earn a living. People in South Georgia, in general, earn a living in different ways than people up in the Blue Ridge, mostly because of the geography. First is the Appalachian Plateau. It's just a tiny, tiny northwest corner of the state, but it's part of the Appalachian mountain chain that stretches from Georgia to Canada. These are some of the oldest mountains on the planet. They're all rounded off by erosion. So this plateau is on the western edge of the Appalachians. It includes the whole northwest corner of Georgia. It's part of Lookout Mountain, which you mostly think of as being in Tennessee. There are lots of caves in this area due to limestone underground and erosion. In fact, the deepest straight descent cave is found in this part of Georgia. This is like a pit going straight down. Those are people who are lowering themselves on ropes straight down to the bottom of this cave. There's a little information about it. It descends 586 feet straight down. Coal and iron have been mined in this region, not so much anymore, but because of the geography, because of its height, and because it's right next to the Ridge and Valley, this part of the state was isolated from everywhere else for a very, very long time. These are pictures from what's called Rocktown, located in Walker County, which is up in the top southwest corner of the state. That's the Appalachian Plateau. The Ridge and Valley region is a little bit inward to the southeast. Let me enlarge this topographical map, or it's an elevation map. You can see that the higher elevations are these pinks and reds. This is the Appalachian Plateau, which we just talked about. This is the Blue Ridge, which we'll get to in just a minute. This little section here is called the Ridge and Valley. It's called the Ridge and Valley because there are ridges here, here, and here, with valleys in between. The ridges run from the northeast, from the northeast to the southwest in this direction. There are several major valleys, Chickamauga, Armuchee, and the Great Valley. The valleys down in between the ridges have fertile farmland, but few roads cross the ridges, I'll show you, going in this direction. For early road builders, that was very difficult to do. Most of the roads run alongside and down in the valleys from this direction. Very few of the roads cross the ridges. They're typically between 1,000 to 1,600 feet in elevation, while the valleys are between 600 and 800 feet above sea level. Next, and the last one of our more mountainous regions, is the Blue Ridge region. It is in the northeast corner of the state. The valleys and mountains in this area have a pattern more like the branches of a tree as opposed to those diagonal lines like the ridge and valley. These are some of the highest points in Georgia. In fact, Brasstown Bald here is the highest point in Georgia at almost 4,784 feet. The Appalachian Trail begins in this part of Georgia, here at Springer Mountain, and goes all the way up to Maine. You may have hiked on parts of the Appalachian Trail. There are lots of waterfalls. Gold was discovered in the 1800s. We talked about that a little bit. Marble is also quarried or dug up in the region. And these days, tourism is a large part of the economy. People have mountain houses. People go in the fall to see the leaves. So tourism is a big part of how people make a living there. We talked last week a little bit about the Piedmont region. It's the next one coming south. It's made up of rolling hills. It's in between these mountainous regions and the flatter coastal plain. You've got clay soils, so you end up with fields like this. Granite outcroppings like Stone Mountain. This is the most populous part of the state. Atlanta's about right here. Here's Athens, Newnan, and LaGrange. More people live in the Piedmont than in any other part of the state. Farming, once you get outside of Atlanta, farming is an important part of how people make a living in the state, but Atlanta and all of its businesses and industries is also very, very much a part of the economy of the Piedmont. Now, the fall line is the line between the Piedmont and the coastal plain. It's where rivers coming from the north flow over the last hard rock of the Piedmont when they're going down to the coastal plain, creating waterfalls and rapids. Cities grew up where rivers crossed the fall line. Columbus on the Chattahoochee, Macon on the Ocmulgee, Milledgeville on the Oconee, and on the Savannah River, Augusta. The reason cities grew up in these areas is because they could use hydropower in early mills and factories, and also because rivers were navigable below the fall line and not above. Big ships couldn't go any further, so that's why those cities became centers of trade. Here's a map of the fall line going all along the southeastern United States. This is the coastal plain. Augusta's about right here, Macon, and Columbus. The coastal plain is the whole southern half of the state. Underground is limestone and sandy soil, which means that under a big part of the coastal plain is the Floridan Aquifer. It's a place where the limestone is almost like a sponge underneath the topsoil, and so there's lots of fresh water stored there. This is the well and the pump from my parents' backyard, and it draws water directly from the Floridan Aquifer. Georgia has barrier islands over here on the Atlantic coast, 100 miles of coastline, and the Okefenokee Swamp down here in the southern part of Georgia. Farming is the most important thing in this region's economy. They grow cotton, tobacco, soybeans, um, blueberries are something that people are starting to grow more of, and of course, corn. Pine trees are also a huge part of the economy there. Today, they're grown for lumber and for paper pulp. Paper products are made from pine trees grown in South Georgia. Those are our 5 areas of Georgia when it comes to the geography.